Introduce myself.
Oh, okay, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dave Long. I'm a master gardener. We've been doing this for a number of years, these workshops. In the fall, we've usually done garlic, and this year we're doing microgreens. So that you guys that are interested in growing vegetables during the slow season, during the winter, you can. So the way we have this set up, if you have questions, use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. You should see it in chat and to the host. The participants are typically muted during the presentation, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for questions. The Master Gardeners, UC Master Gardeners, University of California Master Gardeners, we're not endorsing any of the products that may be mentioned or any of the people that are involved in this. We're not promoting them, but they are essential for us to get this thing done. So let's move on. Okay, this is done. This program is done to explain how to grow food at high elevation. There's a lot of different groups involved in this, and collectively we call ourselves the garden group, or DIG. We work informally with each other. We provide information and materials on gardening in the Tahoe, Truckee, and Carson Valley area. Our collaborators do have various demonstration gardens going on that you can visit. The Truckee Demonstration Garden over in Truckee, the North Tahoe Demonstration Garden at the Sierra Nevada College, although now it's called University of Nevada, Reno, Sierra, I think. And then the Tahoe City Demonstration Garden that's located at the Tahoe Environmental Research Center's field station, and then the Tlac Estates Vegetable Garden at the Pope Estate. Am I froze? Is that what it says?
I do not see that.
Okay, somebody said I froze, so hopefully I'm not frozen. Okay, so we're talking about microgreens. We're talking about growing food all year round indoors. And here's a couple of pictures of the different kinds of materials that you can grow indoors year round here in Tahoe. Okay, we're providing this workshop on growing microgreens. If you participate in the program, you receive any support on how to plant, maintain, or grow your microgreens. We answer any questions. We have your contact information when you signed up, and we may send out notes or tips periodically or questionnaires. We will respond to any inquiries that you have related to this workshop. And at some point, we may ask you to provide information on how well the seeds did. What did you think of what we provided, and how you liked it? For most of our workshops, we're talking about growing in the field in a garden rather than inside. We always cover the thing about being watershed aware, watershed friendly gardening. And since tonight we're not talking about that, we're just going to say that that's an important part of our overall project. But please, this is not part of ours tonight, so we're going to jump over it. So who are we? We consist of a number of organizations. Slow Foods Lake Tahoe. Their mission is to inspire self-reliant food production, eat good, fair, clean food in a sustainable manner. UC Davis Tahoe Environmental Research Center, their emphasis is on the study and research related to the Lake Tahoe Basin environment, and to provide objective scientific knowledge to schools, children, government agencies, and elected officials so that they can make informed decisions on Lake Tahoe environmental issues. And then the Master Gardeners, which I'm a part of, we're here to provide a science-based information on home horticultural or home gardening on a sustainable basis. And we are trained by UC Davis here in Northern California. If we were in Southern California, it would be UC Riverside Prizes Services. And then we do have some supporting groups that work with us as well. The UNR's Desert Farming Initiative, they're the ones who grow all our plants for us, or most of our plants for us. And they're their only certified organic greenhouse in Nevada. And then the Tlac Historic Site, they help by providing a on-site demonstration garden to show how vegetables are being grown. This year, the facility is being operated by the Great Basin Institute, and we can't do this program without the support, excuse me, the support of our local gardeners and schools. They participate and help fund our program through the purchases of the materials like you guys have done, and they provide feedback or not on the provided plants, how well they perform. Okay, so terminology. We're talking about microgreens, but what is a microgreen? There is no true legal definition of what a microgreen is, but in general, the consensus definition is that microgreens are plants grown for fresh consumption. We're going to eat these things. They're grown in a soil medium. I have an asterisk there that we'll talk about later. They're harvested prior to the second set of true leaves. In other words, these really have not grown to full size. These are seedlings that we're going to be eating. And when we harvest them, we're going to eat the leaves and stems. Now, there's a closely related group of plants or vegetables, and these are sprouts. These are grown also for fresh consumption. These are grown without soil, and they're harvested prior to the true leaves being formed. In other words, they're just germinated. There's a little bit of root. There's a little bit of a cotyledon, the first false seed or false leaf that you see in a plant. And for the sprouts, since they're not grown in soil, you typically eat the root, stem, and the cotyledons. You eat the whole thing. And then the last group is if you let your microgreens go too long and they form additional leaves, then that's considered a baby vegetable. And they're also grown for fresh consumption, grown either in soil or hydroponically, and they're harvested any time after the second set of leaves have set. And in this case, leaves and sometimes stems are harvested and consumed. So this would be like baby lettuce, baby kale, baby carrots, baby corn. These are all considered baby vegetables. Okay, in growing microgreens, the groups of plants that we typically find as microgreens are the mustard family, the Brassicaceae. This is the cauliflower, mustard, kale, cabbage. Oh, hi, Joyce. Friend just dropped by. And then the Asteraceae, this would be the lettuce, chicory, could include sunflower as well. And the Apiaceae, the dill, carrot, fennel, celery, the alliums, garlic, onion, leek, chives, and the Amaranaceae, which is the amaranth, Swiss chard, spinach, beets, and then the Cucurbidaceae, which are melons, cucumbers, and squash. So those are the families that are typically used for microgreen cultivation. But when you look at the number of plants, and this is from only one supplier, this is True Leaf Market. These are the types of plants that you can buy seeds for microgreen growing. Quite a few, and this is just one vendor. So now that you know what to grow, let's talk about what not to grow. And what not to grow is the Solanaceae family primarily. This would be the tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, peppers, all types of peppers, and then tobacco, because they contain alkaloids, even in the seedling form, that can be toxic. Not that you're going to die, but you may have an upset stomach, diarrhea, and all that kind of stuff from eating these plant seedlings. So you don't want to include those in your microgreens at all. So one of the things that a number of the master gardeners have asked to include in our program is a little bit about the nutritional profile of these plants that we're talking about and growing. And unfortunately for microgreens, the nutritional value of the microgreens is wholly dependent on what type of plant variety is being grown. So you saw the whole list there. The nutritional aspect of each one of those are slightly different. However, often the nutrient value is greater in microgreens on a weight-to-weight basis than on the mature plant. And the reason for that is that all the vitamins and nutrients that are packed into that seed are found in the seedling and is not as diffused as in the mature plant. So things like vitamin C, vitamin K, vitamin A, these will always often be much higher on a weight-to-weight basis in a microgreen than it would be in a mature plant. The things that are more frequently found in higher concentrations in mature plants, however, are those products and byproducts of photosynthesis, such as sugar and carbohydrates. Okay, when I do these programs, I'm always including something on history. And the history of microgreens is not very long because it's kind of started in the 1980s or 90s, depending on what reference you look at, in Southern California. And then it spread to the San Francisco Bay Area, or in some versions of the history, it goes backwards. And then it moved east. And the gentleman who is kind of credited for the coining the term microgreens is a chef called Craig Hartman. He has been in the restaurant business for a number of years, working closely with a number of high-end restaurants and vineyards. And in 1990, his friend, Michael Clark, had these small plants that were supposed to be baby greens, but were not fully developed. He brought them into the restaurant and said, "Hey, Craig, here's your baby greens." And Craig said, "Those don't qualify as baby greens. They're even smaller than that." And the term microgreens came up. A food writer talking to Craig Hartman about it, and since Craig started to use these materials, wrote it up. And in 1992, it was part of a story about this new microgreens. And then most of us know that in Asian cuisines, the use of sprouted vegetables has been used for centuries. But in our world, microgreens is a new definition, a new term, and that's the history of that. So thanks, Craig. So what do you get when you're growing our microgreen kit and for this program? So we've teamed with a guy, Indigenous Farms. He is local to Lake Tahoe, and he put together these kits for us that we've augmented. And so what you get is, on this picture here, you get a little growing tub that's about 5 inches by 5 inches. And then you get a tray that it sits in for water overflow. You get growing instructions, so in case I'm not sufficiently clear on anything. And then you get 4 different kinds of seeds to grow as part of this. But because we're master gardeners here in Tahoe, we had to augment that, so there's actually even more. we worked with Johnny's Selected Seeds and came up with 3 more sets of seeds for you to use. And these have been, we bought them in bulk and we broke them down. So you get a total of 7 different kinds of seeds to try in your microgreens growing situation. Now, the ones that we put together here, we broke into small envelopes for seeds, and it was kind of difficult. The seeds are 500,000 seeds per pound. We ordered a 1/4 pound, and in counting out the seeds, you get to 4,000 seeds and you forget what number you're on, so you have to start over. So it took us a long time to repackage them. So some people might get a slightly more seeds than other people, but if you want to count the seeds to see exactly what number it is, more power to you. Okay, so getting started with these microgreen kits, you have 2 options to get started. The first option is as the instructions that you receive in the kit says, you just put the dry soil in the grow tray, pack the soil down so it has a smooth surface, evenly distribute the seeds across the surface, and then heavily mist the seeds with water. Then you cover it up. The alternate way of doing it, and one that I prefer, is pre-wetting the soil. And I actually wet the soil in the bag that it comes in. So when you wet the soil here, you don't want it super saturated. You just want it moist. So I add water to the bag. Then once the water has been absorbed, put it into the container, put the seeds on top, mist the seeds so they're wet on both top and bottom, and you're good to go. If you happen to, although we're not providing it, but if you happen to be doing beans, peas, sunflowers, or grasses, it's important to pre-soak the seeds for 4 hours prior to putting them onto the soil surface. Okay, you use the bottom watering tray as a lid after you've put the seeds in and wetted them. And this provides a high humidity environment for the seeds. You want to check on them 1 or 2 times a day and mist the seeds if the soil surface appears dry. It will appear dry more frequently or more likely if you've used option 1, the dry soil method. But if you use the pre-wetted soil, it's less likely to dry out. There's just more water in the soil. The soil is ready to go. And then the days before it germinates depends on the seed type, the temperature in your room, and the overall humidity. An example is, I have a friend, Joyce, who did hers on her kitchen table where it got some sun in a warm house, and hers germinated in a matter of 2 or 3 days. And mine, I have it in a window in my house that I keep that is cooler, very similar to the inside of a refrigerator. And so at 3 or 4 days, it still has not germinated. So the days to germination of your seeds is dependent on the seed type, 1, the temperature, ambient temperature of the room, and then the overall humidity in your little grow chamber. That's with the growing pot with the lid on it. Once the seeds germinate, you remove the lid and place it as a watering tray underneath your container, your soil container. And then water is needed to keep the soil moist. You can water from below, or you can continue to mist the plants. You want to place the tray in an area that gets some sun, or you can use grow lights, although everybody has a window that gets some sun during the day. Microgreens can be harvested 3 to 15 days after sprouting. That difference in duration is dependent on the type of seed you planted, the temperature of the room that you're growing them in, and the amount of sunlight. Typically, you harvest them when they are about 1.5 inches tall or taller, and you want to harvest them before the second set of true leaves appear. So pretty straightforward. Okay, to harvest them, you just cut the greens near the soil surface. Do not pull them up from the soil. We don't want any of the soil in with your salad, or however you're using the greens. You can rinse them gently just prior to use. You don't want to rinse them and then store them for a long period of time. So, and you can store them in a container for a day or two after cutting in a refrigerator. Rinsing is only optional if you're growing them indoors under sanitary conditions, and you cut them with a clean pair of scissors or clean knife, and you use them right away. If you're growing them in the windowsill and your cat is also in the windowsill with the plants, then maybe you want to rinse them off before you use them. But don't rinse them and then store them in the refrigerator. Okay, problems associated with growing microgreens. Pretty straightforward. If you have poor germination, okay, the seeds were allowed to dry out or were not watered adequately. And again, if you're using option one, the one that comes with the instructions, where you're just misting the soil, then it's important that you mist 2 or 3 times a day to make sure that their seeds don't dry out. Otherwise, what will happen, they'll start to germinate and then they'll just not germinate. However, if you overwater them so that they're basically sitting in mud, too much water, then the seeds will actually start to germinate and then rot and just will not form a plant. Another thing that may affect germination is that the temperature is too cold or too hot in your growing area. Some plants like the cucurbids, that would be the cucumbers, melons, and those things, need a very high temperature, like 75 degrees or warmer, for them to germinate. And they would not germinate at my house unless I put a heating pad underneath them. Another cause of poor germination would be you have too many seeds clumped together. The seeds that form kind of a mucilage type coating when they start to germinate, this would be like chia, chia pets. As they start to germinate, they form this mucilage type coating around the seeds prior to germinating. And if they're clumped together, that mucilage type mass will inhibit germination. And it's so that if there's a limited number of nutrients, then only the plants that have the nutrients and can get to them first will germinate. So it's kind of seeds clumped together will affect your germination rates. And then seedlings that wilt suddenly. This is a dampening off, and that's typically caused by too much watering. Wilting plants, however, are caused by not having enough moisture, and they just wilt over. These can be resuscitated typically by misting it or adding water to your soil to make sure it has plenty of water. If you overwater, it often allows the soil fungus to attack the roots, which will cause the plants to wilt. And occasionally there's a problem with the potting soil. And what I mean by this is some of the potting soils are not intended for use for seedlings. The nutrient levels are too high, and it basically burns the roots of the seedlings. Only a very few potting soils have this problem, and those are the ones that are typically noted for being like rose bushes or vegetable gardens, because they already have a lot of fertilizer put in them. They're not meant for seedling or propagation. Occasionally you'll have problems with insects, especially small gnats or flies. This could be an issue with the potting soil that you used. If it had or contained manure in that blend of potting soil and the manure was not fully composted, then you can have a problem with flies and gnats. Typically, however, the contamination comes from other indoor plants that the soil already has the insects associated with it, and then they contaminate your new microgreen container. And then the last one, or next to last one, is plants growing unevenly. Sometimes you'll see that they'll grow bigger and taller on one side of the container than the other, and that may be due to inconsistent lighting. So just rotate your container. If they grow unevenly, it may be also too many seeds in the container. And then uneven growth could be caused by trying to grow different types of seeds that have different germination requirements in the same container. And so some of the ones that germinate later will be smaller, and it's tough going. And then the last thing, occasionally you will get foul odors or a smell associated with the soil or plants, and that's almost always an overwatering issue. Okay, now then, oh. There we go. Okay, growing seed blend mixes. In our kit that we're handing out, we have 3 mixes. These mixes have been selected by professional horticulturalists, professional gardeners, professional farmers, so that they all germinate at the same time. And typically on these mixes, they're all very similar in the species. So it'll be Brassicaceae, so it'll be different kinds of kale, be different kinds of broccoli, there'll be different kinds of mustard, but the germination requirements are always the same. It can be challenging to grow blended mixes if you're mixing it yourself. So it actually is easier if you just grow individual species, varieties in individual containers, and then just cut them and mix them after you've harvested them. And this picture here shows that you can use other containers. Many of the plastic containers that you get, clamshells and stuff at the market that have vegetables in them, these can be reused to grow microgreens very easily. You just have to make sure that there's holes in the bottom of them and that you have a way to put a lid on it, either a dark lid or a clear lid. The importance of the lid when you first start them is to have high humidity conditions, not so much, less to eliminate light. So, and then many of the microgreens that you can buy from seeds are listed as being a fast or slow germination and harvest. Johnny Seeds has a whole list of all their plants that are used as microgreens listed by slow or fast germination rates. And you can look it up and decide on what you want to do. So what are you going to do with these microgreens now that you've grown them? I mean, we're giving you, I think, 6, 7 different varieties. They take from the time you start to the time you finish, it's 2 to 3 weeks. So I mean, this will get you through the first of the year if you grow them sequentially rather than growing them concurrently. So what are you going to do with your microgreens? Well, obviously you can add them to salads. You can put them on sandwiches. Here's a good example of putting it on a sandwich. You can juice them and add them to your Slurpees or your juice stuff. You can add them to soups. You can use them as stir fry, as a side dish. And the one that I'm very interested in trying is making pesto. Making pesto out of it. Making microgreen out of pesto sounds very intriguing. Looking forward to trying that. Okay, more stuff. I mentioned with that asterisk at the beginning, you really don't absolutely need to use soil to grow microgreens. You can use this felt mat or similar, just as long as it provides root support. However, if you're doing that, there's no nutrients in the felt mat. So you'll either have to add nutrients in the way of fertilizers, very small amounts, or harvest them sooner before the nutrients in the seed are depleted. Okay, and then the other thing is, if you're really tired of having your wine cooler that you seldom use in your kitchen, you can actually buy these urban culvinators that fit in place of a wine chiller, and they're fully computerized. And if you have water, electricity, and a drain, you just put the seeds in your pot, put it in the chamber, program it, and then you come back and pick out your microgreens when you're all done. Kind of a real neat over-the-top thing that I would never get, but hey, it looks cool. Okay, now we talked about microgreens, but let me hit briefly on sprouts. We talked about sprouts, the difference between sprouts and microgreens. Sprouts are not grown in soil. Microgreens are grown in soil or some root substrate, support substrate. Excuse me. So you use the same seeds. The difference is you soak them for 4 to 6 hours, and then you can put them in a jar. Drain the jar. You need the lid of the jar to have a screen. The screen has to be a tight mesh, small enough to prevent the seeds from falling out. And then you drain it out after you soak them for 4 hours. You drain the water out, and then you put them on a table that gets some light. So you don't have to cover it. So the way this works is that you drain the water, you invert the jar, in this case a jar. You have to make sure that there is air circulation for the inverted jar. So here you can see they're laying against or leaning against the wall. You can have them on their side, but you need air. You don't want this to be airtight at all. For the next several days, you rinse the seeds 2 to 3 times a day. That means putting water in the jar, swirling it around to get all the seeds, make sure they're always damp, and then you drain them after each rinse by inverting it like that. You do this 2 to 3 times a day, and after 2 or 3 days, depending on the temperature of your room, they will start to germinate. And after the germination occurs, they're considered sprouts, and you can remove them at any time after that. So if you keep rinsing them and draining them, you can get baby sprouts, more mature sprouts, or whatever. And then to store them, you can place them on a paper towel, and then put them in an airtight container and refrigerate them, and then they're good to go for 2 to 3 days. You can use a cheesecloth as a screen for your jar if you want to. It's very simple, as long as the mesh of the cheesecloth is fine enough so that the seeds don't fall out. Growing sprouts are very easy. It's very easy, but they're also subject to contamination with bacteria. E. coli is the one that comes to mind most frequently. And as a consequence, there are very few grocery stores that carry sprouted seeds. You'll find microgreens in grocery stores, but you won't find sprouted seeds just because of the prospect of potential contamination. And there's been a lot of work done. The citation I give you is from Clemson University. And the last thing I'll say about the sprouts is, if you don't rinse and drain them frequently, you'll have poor germination. If you have poor germination, then why are you doing it? So since you have to do it 2 or 3 times a day for 2 or 3 days, you have to have your schedule around growing them. Whereas microgreens, you're going to miss them one time a day. If you use the option of pre-wetted soil, you may not have to water it, but once every other day. Okay, microgreens as a crop. Believe it or not, the microgreen worldwide market in 2022 was $1.7 billion. So I was astounded to see this in the reference that I have there. They're expecting 13% growth in the next 2 years. I mean, this is a big business. Just for comparison purposes, I selected the California date market, the date crop, to hundreds, thousands of acres in the Imperial County growing dates. And that total crop in 2021 was only $114 million. The microgreens are 10 times that amount on a worldwide basis anyway. And then in Tahoe, our only organic commercial farm is in Indigenous Farms, which does grow our microgreens. And you'll see Myco at a number of the farmers markets here that you can buy materials from or get materials from. So on this slide, again, this will all be uploaded to wherever we upload these things, and you can check it out, or you can take a screenshot of it. These are just some of the potential suppliers of seeds and supplies related to microgreens. And again, Indigenous Farms, our local guy that provided our kits and everything. Now, Johnny Seeds has a whole bunch of information on growing microgreens, everything from growing it on your windowsill to commercial production. High Mowing Seeds is another one that has extensive information on growing it. And then True Leaf Market is very big on both microgreens and sprouts. And then Sproutman, which the image that I have is from them. They have different setups for the homeowner, for the small producer, especially mixes of microgreens. Okay, the last thing I think that we're going to be talking about is your pickup location. So you're going to be picking up the plant kits and the garlic also from 9 to 11 a.m. this Saturday, 3 locations. One is at the Y here for Big 5 parking lot, or Verde Grill, or Cup of Coffee, whatever store you want to, but we're in that parking lot. The second location is in Truckee. That's at the community garden there at the regional park. That's Slow Foods Lake Tahoe's garden. And then the third location in Tahoe City is at the field station on Lake Forest Road. That's the old hatchery. You can register for these types of events in the future at slowfoodslaketahoe.org. And then here's my information in case you want to get on my case about what I talked about. And then this will be recorded and uploaded to the UC Master Gardeners YouTube. Master Gardeners have, if you want to talk to Master Gardeners about this, we have the information there. So I think I'm done. I've finished, I'm complete, and I'm looking at going fishing. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I think stop sharing. And here I am in my hat in my office. Hey, Joyce, with Joyce next to me. And if there's a question, I'll be glad to answer it. And that's it. Annie, you're muted. Everybody's muted.
I am muted. I believe everyone can unmute themselves if they desire and ask a question. We had one comment on the during the presentation, and it was about
my hat. It was about my hat, right?
No,
Oh,
they
okay.
liked your hat.
Okay.
Someone suggested that we look at using the space in Kmart for a farmer's market where Kmart was. And that was Beth.
An
Beth,
indoor farmer's market during the winter. You know,
is that what she was? Is it a building? Is it still a building?
yeah, it's an indoor building. That's outside my pay rate, but it's a heck of a good idea. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah.
It's a very good idea, and it's something that maybe we can look into. We have another question from Abby, and she asks, can you recommend brands, which we do not do, but Dave can tell us what he might be using, or if he has a list of soils, but what brands of potting soils for microgreens?
Great question. I'm not going to recommend any particular one, but what you don't want to get is a potting soil or a potting soil that's specifically for like roses or vegetables. You just want a generic potting soil, the cheapest ones. And the reason you want that is that the ones that have nutrients, fertilizers already added to it can be too hot for propagation of seedlings, and they will dampen off. They just get burned. The roots get burned before they can get developed. So any of the cheap garden soils, potting soils, soils that are used for raised beds, any of those, but stay away from those soils that are specifically stating perfect for vegetables or perfect for roses, because those have a little bit too much fertilizer in them for starting your seedlings.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Are there any other questions?
Does anyone else have a question?
Yeah, please
Yes,
jump in.
This is Susan. I do have a question.
Sure.
Could you show us some images of when you said the second leafing? Do you have something that compares the first leafing and the second leafing so that I can have an idea of what it looks like?
Excellent. I'm sorry I don't, because believe it or not, I harvest mine before they even get the first seedling. So first leaf, first true leaf. So real quickly, let me explain it, and hopefully you'll understand it. So when a seed germinates, there are two false or more. One, if it's a grass, it'll be one. If it's a seedling, a dicot, it will be two. But these are false leaves called a cotyledon, and they're what you see typically in all the pictures that I showed there. Throughout there were not even true leaves; they were just the cotyledons from the seed. The true leaf will be shaped like a leaf, not just round. It will be shaped like a leaf, but it will be rather small. And it will take, after it germinates, it may take 2 or 3 weeks for that first true leaf to show, and then another week for the second set of true leaves to show. So all the stuff that I showed you were all cotyledons. They weren't even true leaves. And when you do your first pot, you might want to leave it for another few days and then look very, very closely at the very top, the apical tip of your plant, and you'll see, if you look very closely, a very tiny, tiny, tiny little true leaf. Sorry, I don't have a picture that I can just pull up, but I hope that answers you, Susan.
Okay. Second question. If you use something like coconut coil to grow the seeds on, is it a one-time use or can you use it multiple times?
Geez, why didn't I put that in there? Excellent question. For your soil, for your felt mat, for your coconut stuff, do not try to reuse it. And the reason is, the longer it has been in cultivation, the more likely you're going to have problems with it. And if you're using potting soil, then the depletion of any nutrients will be even less. Plus, you can't get the roots out of your old soil to begin with. Because remember, for microgreens, we're just cutting off the above ground area. So all those roots and everything are there. So it's difficult, if not impossible, to reuse that soil without going through a composting operation and breaking down the roots and starting all over. So do not, for microgreens, do not try to reuse the soil.
Okay, question 3.
Oh,
I'm
wait
on
a second, wait a
roll.
second.
I'm on a roll.
I've seen these kind of reporters before on CNN. Okay, go
No,
ahead.
I'm a writer, not a reporter.
Okay.
If you have a microgreen thing, it basically, it's got a basin and an open area, like chicken wire, but out of plastic. So theoretically, I think the greens are supposed to grow up through it so you can chop them off easily. Would it be better to put, keep the bottom open air, put a piece of weed cloth in, put the soil on top of it so that the roots will grow down into water and they won't become waterlogged, and then chop the microgreens off?
If you want to do it that way, it sounds like it would be perfectly reasonable, but it seems like a couple different levels of effort compared to just taking a pot, putting your soil in it, wetting the soil, putting the seeds on, and covering it. There's, I mean, this is as simple as possible the way we're presenting it. But what you're suggesting is perfectly doable, but what do you think would be the advantage?
I thought that perhaps some air around the bottom of the roots might be good so that they wouldn't become compacted in the soil and they wouldn't become a little bit too wet. I had it with the coconut coil on the bottom and the strainer type thing on the top, and I got the best case of fluffy white mold you've ever seen.
Well, again, if you're using the options we gave you, option 1, option 2, option 1 is what's coming in the instruction. That's where you're just misting the soil. And so it's not compacted enough really to close up any of the capillary areas in the soil. When you're using option 2, that you pre-wet the soil, there is a possibility that you can oversaturate your soil.
Okay.
So, and then have that issue of going anaerobic because there's no air pores in the soil. But as long as you don't oversaturate your soil, but just keep it moist, just like a house plant, just like your garden plants, just like everything, you'll do fine. You'll do great.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate the information.
Okay.
You're going to have a great time. You're going to have a great time with this. And I'm interested to see as you play around with these different seed groupings, what you think of the system that we've come up with. And I should say, in our kit, we're giving you 4 packages of soil already, but we're giving you 7 types of seeds. So that means you have to come up with 3 soils on your own. So I hope that you can figure out where to get your soil, or just go with 4. Okay. Other questions?
We have more questions coming in.
Man.
Let's see, Beth, would you like to address your idea?
Yes, I just read that it was really not my idea. It was somebody on Facebook, I think. But yeah, it would be nice to maybe mention it to the master gardeners here. But also about the soil here, for the microgreens, should it be OMRI or does that matter?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. I mean, the seeds that you've gotten that we're handing out are all organically grown seeds. So if you're hot to trot to grow organically completely for the microgreens, then get organic soils for that purpose. But it's not essential for you to be successful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Beth was a master gardener in Marin County 10 years ago. And we'd
You
love
can grow
to
just
have
about
you come-
anything in Marin County.
Not
Come to
here.
Tahoe and try.
I've
You
been
can-
doing that.
Okay,
Okay. You'll have to join our Mary group.
yes, we invite you to join us.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. Yeah.
Let's see, Barbara asks if there's another day that she can pick up her packet. She's got a conflict and it looks like it was going to Tahoe City and you wanted to go to South Shore, is that right? Or is that Beth again?
Not me.
Okay.
Okay. So very quickly, let me say, we provided you my contact information, and I've already received 2 or 3 people who have a conflict for picking up their material. If you give me your contact information, we will make arrangements within the next day or so, since these are seeds, they're not going to go bad or anything like that, that we can either meet you or you can swing by and pick them up. We don't typically like to do that for live plants, but since we're not dealing with live plants, we can make arrangements. I can leave it on my doorstep and you can swing by and pick it up. We don't have to worry about bears getting into that and stuff like that. We can make arrangements to drop it off when I go fishing, if it happened to be fishing in your area. My fishing hat, by the way. So that we can get, so send me your information, tell me what you need, and we will try our best to make arrangements to get you the material. And if I can't get it to you in the next few days, if I get it to you in a week or 2 weeks, it really doesn't matter. As soon as you get it, you can start your microgreen growing. It's a lot easier than the seedlings we hand out during the spring.
Alrighty, Barbara, did you get his contact information?
It's just so that you know, it's David M. Long, all one word, at earthlink.net. And it is on when it's posted to YouTube up in the cloudy sky thingy, you can check it out there, and it's on one of the last ones. One thing I will say, we do have a number of extra sets of kits that we're hoping to get to the school. So if any of you have connections with the schools and you think that this might be something that will work at the schools, it's great because in a matter of 2 weeks, they can be harvesting their material. So the kids' interest does not wane that quickly. It's a very slam bam. Well, you know the phrase. Okay. Anything else, guys?
Yes, we have educational trainers want to ask a question. You have your hand up?
Oh, she's mute. There you go. Educate.
Hi, yes.
What is an educational trainer?
Oh, it's my work Zoom name.
Okay.
I teach clinical stuff, but my question, and I know this, maybe you've addressed this, and maybe this is a really dumb question, but I'm a beginner, is so when you trim the leaves at the base, and then is the expectation that it's just going to keep growing like many times, and you just keep trimming the
No,
leaves?
this is one and done,
one
baby. One
Okay.
and done. You're gonna cut it
Okay.
off. What I like to do is I'm gonna have a salad, or I'm gonna have soup, or I even put it in my oatmeal. So I'll grab a corner, a square inch or two, and just use a pair of scissors, cut it off, and then throw it in whatever I'm using, and then let the rest go. And then every day I cut a little bit off. But once it's cut off, the terminal end is removed, and it will not resprout.
Then do you have to do you have to dump that soil then because it has
Yeah,
the spent seed in it?
when you've cut them all down, you dump the soil into your compost pile or into your garden soil pile, and you're done. You get new soil and you start all over again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's really a simple thing, but that's sequential growing of microgreens. You can do it concurrently by having multiple containers and putting multiple sets of seeds out, and then you can harvest a few beet seeds, a few radish seeds, a few broccoli leaves, and then mix it together and use it that way, or use a blended mixtures. Okay, enough of that. What else?
Okay, thank you for that question. Julia, you have your hand up.
First question is, what temperature do you need to keep it at? Because I keep my house very cool. That's the way I'm comfortable, but do I need to raise the temperature?
65 degrees or higher is pretty much the minimal germination temperature for most of these. Now, when you're talking about kale and the Brassicaceae, you can drop your house or the temperature down to about 60 degrees and they will still germinate. It may take an extra day or two for germination to occur. If you're growing microgreens that are in the squash family, though, anything under 70 degrees will be difficult for it to germinate in a reasonable amount of time. If they don't germinate in a 10-15 days and they're constantly wet, they're going to rot and not do anything anyway. But 65 degrees is kind of a cutoff for most of these. If it's Brassicaceae, you can get down to 60 or even 55. But it'll just take a few days longer to germinate.
And do I need to keep a light on it a full 24 hours, or I can just turn off the light, at nighttime? Or just
No.
light?
If you're growing it like in an area that does not get some sunlight, you may want to use grow lights. But if it's in the window of your kitchen, whatever sun comes through that window is going to be adequate for your plants. Remember, we're just growing them until they get the first set of leaves starting. So you could almost grow them in the dark, but you want some light on them so they will green up. But we don't need a lot of light. You don't need to keep it 24/7. You don't need any of that. Whatever ambient light is in your kitchen window or whatever window you're growing them in, you're good.
And then my last question is there any concern about the trays, the growing trays being plastic? Should they be something else? Are the microgreens absorbing anything?
No, the microgreens are not absorbing these any organic materials from the plastic. We are growing them for such a short period of time that it will not pick up any of the plastic. Plus, the plastic kits that we're giving you are specifically designed to grow plants so that the movement of organic materials, synthetic organic materials to the plant through the soil media is essentially none for the type of that we're doing. However, if you look around and would like to grow them in an old cooking pan, like an old cake pan, poke some holes in it, and then you have one last thing to worry about if that is a concern. You can grow them very well in that way too.
And how long can you use those plastic growing trays? Do they start to break down?
As long as you are using them inside, they're going to be usable for hundreds and hundreds of times. If you put them outside where you have freezing temperatures, they may become brittle over time. So as long as you're using them inside, you'll be fine.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, Barbara asked, made a comment, and gave us her address. I put the link, or excuse me, I put Dave's address in the email for you. So if you contact him, then he can make arrangements. Alrighty.
Yep.
Okay, Jennifer comments. Let's see, she is on the PTA at Magnet School and would be happy to share with some of the teachers. Sounds wonderful.
If you, again, send me your information or get my contact information and let me know. We don't have a ton of these extra kits, but we do have a few that we can give a school to try out. And again, the growing microgreens for kids is just dynamite because it doesn't take all year to get something that you can eat. It just is a matter of 2 weeks and you're eating it. So this is a great one to introduce the kids to soil science, botany, plant development, and nutrition. It's a great little project that is in a 5-inch by 5-inch container that you can mist or add water to, check daily, measure the growth rates, all kinds of things you can do with a 5-inch container. So send me your information, let me know what you want. If we can pull it off, we'll pull it off.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's a wonderful proposition for us. And I did put Dave's address in the chat for everyone to see. So if you scroll down, you'll see that. Would anybody else like to ask a question, make a comment? And oops, at net. Let's see, Dave,
Yeah,
read me your address. I may have typed it in wrong. David, I spelled David wrong.
David M. Long, all lowercase, all one word, at earthlink.net.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I did type that wrong.
Oh, you spelled my
I was
name wrong. I
listening.
see it here now.
Pardon?
I see it here now. You spelled my name wrong.
I
You got
know.
me as
I was listening.
David.
I can't
David.
listen and type at the same time.
Okay. Hey, guys, are we just about done here?
Okay, I'm going to put the link in, David M. Long at Earthlink .net. And so
Right.
I will leave that up there for a couple of minutes for folks to copy that. The 3 dots at the side are where you can hit the 3 dots and click on the word copy, and then you have it on your computer. Dave, thank you so very much.
Oh, yeah, there's a glass of wine calling me, so I'm going to get going. If there's any questions, contact me at the email address for making arrangements to pick up your kits, or if you're a school and need a couple kits, let us know. With that, I'm going to sign off.
Okay.
So thank you, everybody, for doing it. And I think it's Merlot calling.
Dave, let me
Yeah.
thank our sponsors,
Oh.
our collaborators one more time.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Slow Foods Lake Tahoe, great group. They help us with registration. That's where you paid your money. That's how they manage our stuff. Turk Tahoe Environmental Research Center. They have been just for 20 plus years, they have been just dynamite about research on the lake and environmental issues related to the lake. And we're so happy that they have agreed to, again, help us out. And then our Master Gardener group, if you need anything to know about growing stuff, vegetables, plants, Firewise landscaping, we're the group to go to. You'll often see us at farmers markets here in the South Lake Tahoe area. And then the Great Basin Institute and our partner over at the LAC site. All great places to learn about gardening here in Lake Tahoe, not just food, but gardening in general. Okay? Now can
And
I
I
get my
also-
glass of Merlot?
I just put my address in. I believe the one you had on the website was wrong, or on your slides. So I put my address in if somebody would like to contact me. Thank you ever so much. Really.
Okay, I'm
appreciate-
done. Bye-bye.
All righty, thanks. Bye-bye.